So we're going to talk about beauty in the bioswale. Just to update, how many of you have been to a couple of my classes before? Bunch of newbies. Okay, cool. I like it. All right, so we're going to talk about some of our learning objectives. Essentially, this is stormwater management using green infrastructure instead of hard infrastructure. So you can see here where the road is being flooded out. In the 70s, we started taking our hard pipe infrastructure as a landscape architect like myself and started applying it to virtually everything, especially our residents. And instead of leaving the water where it lands and keeping it on your property. Well, of course, it's important so that we don't have hydroplaning on roadways, but we need to do a much better job of getting that water, that storm water, treated and put back into the aquifer. So we're going to talk a little bit about one of those methods that you can use, okay? I usually do this up in Duval, but it's some of our daily rainfall trends, and we get typically 76 inches of rainfall every year, which is quite a bit. I think that's probably pretty close to accurate for most of the state. It may fluctuate a few inches here and there. You can go on to the National Centers of Environmental information, and you can pull that information up for your particular region, and it'll give you a breakdown by year, average trends, et cetera. And I think that's actually rather helpful. And we track our rain on campus through our weather stations for our irrigation system. So our annual rainfall that was for Florida. Our average rainfall is 47 inches, or 48. It fluctuates a little bit. Here you can see it's got some of the other locations near us in the northeast area. And then our water supply. So 92% of all of the water that we use on a daily basis is coming from our Florida aquifer. That's a substantial amount. I believe the number is about 60% from irrigation. The rest of it is for cooking, drinking, laundry, et cetera. So we're not putting 92% back into the aquifer. That in turn ends up causing problems with our groundwater, our wells, contaminating them, sinkholes, et cetera. So we want to do a much better job of that. And I don't know if this embedded email or video is going to go away. Okay, so this is when I first got to UNF. I got there in 2013. A parking lot was resurfaced, and then they built a park with 7 storm drains, hard pipe storm drains. The water didn't quite go down those storm drain systems that it was designed for. It bypassed it, and this was only a ½ inch rainfall in a half an hour. We had white caps. Look at that, like literally white caps. Look at all that pollution and sediment going into the storm drain. That's going directly into Candy Cane Lake. That in turn goes into the Sawmill Slough, which is part of the Sao Paulo waterway. When you have all that type of sediment and pollutions, oils, etc., that can cause fish kills. We need to not do this, right? So we got to do a much better job. And I thought that was a great way of explaining what stormwater can do and how maybe we can do a better job of managing it. So we also want to make sure that we're not putting grass cuttings and clippings into our storm drains. That ends up clogging them up. As it decays, it ends up decomposing. It releases a ton of nitrogen, and in turn, what does that do? Algae. Did you already get a bag? Okay, next person then. If you interact with me, you get swag. Yeah, so it can be a problem. And then this is also what can happen, right? So this was down in the Fort Lauderdale area at Lake Okeechobee, and that's from heavy pesticides. That's a massive fish kill. So we got, again, right, I'm just trying to pound in that we got to do a much better job at managing our stormwater. And so, again, why do we have this problem? Because we're hard piping everything, even in residential areas. Your gutters for your roof, what are they doing? They're putting that water down your driveway and into the hard pipe storm drain instead of collecting it on the property. How many of you remember having little swales in your yard graded so that it would collect that water on your property, right? And make sure it didn't go to your neighbors, right? We're not doing that anymore, especially with our 0 lots. We need to do a much better job because that eventually makes its way into those water bodies like in that video or in the photo I showed before where it causes those fish kills, okay? Here's a great way to solve that problem, and it's attractive. You can turn around and you can take your gutters and create a little dry riverbed, if you will. Plant some plants along the sides and let that handle the water. When it's filled up with water, it looks great. It's pretty. It's also attractive when it's not filtering the water, but now it's not going down that driveway. Okay. Rain gardens are very similar to bioswales. Rain gardens, essentially the biggest difference between a rain garden and a bioswale is a rain garden uses soil and plants at the basin. It's designed like a bathtub, okay, so the bottom is completely flat. You use organic material, and then of course you're using plants that can handle being wet and dry, and it's planted at the base. Whereas a bioswale, we'll go into more detail, is essentially has a gravel bottom. Rain gardens are designed to hold water for 24 to no more than 48 hours. A bioswale, you want it to hold it for 3 to 4 days. Okay, so places to use a rain garden, it could be off of parking lots. In Miami Beach, it could be off your gutters too. In Miami Beach in 2006, so I think it's like kind of weird that I'm still talking about this topic and it's not very popular, is that I designed all of our parking lots in Miami Beach in 2006 and 2007 to have at the curb, so we had asphalt, and then where the curb cuts are, we had a 2-foot ribbon of permeable surface, permeable asphalt, or we used another bonded aggregate, okay, because that's where you didn't have a lot of traction from the roads and it didn't degrade it. And then we also put in either a bioswale or a rain garden. I even put in rain bladders, which is similar to a rain barrel, underground. So we are capturing the overflow from the rain garden and putting it into the bladder so that we had water for irrigation during exceptional droughts. So we weren't having to use potable water to irrigate our plants, and then we were also using Florida-friendly landscaping, which you'll get to hear more about that, and native plants in those areas. So that was something that we did. I designed a dog park on Washington Avenue where we captured the rainwater off of a local library, and I ended up using 2 rain barrel cisterns that collected 8,000 gallons each. There was an overflow valve. There is a little thing, though, you need to know when you use those systems, is that if you're cycling, the water's low and during an exceptional drought, if you're not careful and you don't cycle it correctly and have a pause between cycles to allow for an autofill if needed, or to shut it down, you'll burn out your pump. We learned that the hard way. But we also irrigate that part to this day through those systems, and it includes a doggy splash pad that you can step on with a pressure gauge and step on with your foot to activate it for the pups. So it's really cute. But again, this is showing you here how you would use in a rain garden the compost, and it's a completely different striation layers for how you would construct it. I have all of that information if you want to get into the weeds with it and all the details. I'll be happy to share it with you later. Okay. And then, so bioswales, they're sloped retention areas. They're essentially a glorified ditch. They're very pretty. The University of Florida did some studies, and they showed residents different images of what they perceived as beautiful, and that they found that bioswales that were planted like a rain garden in large swaths was the least attractive. They tend to look a little weedy and a little messy. They also didn't like ones that were completely just gravel and just a dry riverbed with a few boulders. They liked this combination. So when I was designing this particular bioswale, which was constructed 2 years ago, that's what we ended up doing, is we used like that visual cue. Now, I would love to have a few more attractive boulders in there just for aesthetics, to invite people to come and sit into the space. But this photo with Kelly, my design partner on this one, I don't usually collaborate, but I love Kel. Kel's got my heart. She's a lot like me and the way she thinks, and so it was fun to collaborate with her, and she designs for wildlife and nature, and so we think very much alike in that regard, and I was really swamped, so it was good to have a collaborator. But anyways, this is about a year old from this photo. We'll go into a little bit more about it, and right plant, right place, etc. So here's a cross-section of the bioswale. You can see here that we're not using soil. We've got a filter fabric. So we excavated the site. You'll see what it looked like before, but you would excavate the site, you would apply a filter fabric, then you apply super thick, coarse-grained sand, and then another layer of filter fabric so your striations don't get mixed up, and then the gravel on top. And then your storm drain would be a little bit raised. In our case, I would love to have that storm drain raised significantly more because of where the high water value is. So this is showing you where the high water value is. It's like pretty close to top of berm. In my case, it's very low compared to top of berm. To raise the storm drain though through DEP, it would cost about $25,000 to $50,000. We could technically raise it without raising the lid by just creating a lip around it, so that we can hold even more gallons of water before it flows into that hard pipe. I have a way I may do that. That's kind of tricky. But right now it's like everybody's like afraid, oh no, don't change it. It's like, I'm not changing anything. But anyways, so, and then you would have your vegetation on the side. And the vegetation on the sides is allowing that water to come through, and it acts as our livers, and it filters out a lot of the pollutants. It doesn't filter out all of them. And then here's some examples of parking lots. You can see the middle is really truly a rain garden versus the bioswales. They can be quite large or they can be much smaller. And then this is Cornell University. Their bioswale is enormous. It's absolutely lovely. And then this is what our bioswale space looked like 2 years ago. 2.5 years ago. So what I want to point out to you is that you can see the roadway in the background. Okay, it's pitching towards that space, and you can see how flooded it is and waterlogged it is. Then the roof, you can see, I don't know, the lighting in here is kind of tough, but you can see there's roof scuppers. Okay, so this particular building is quite large, so it's got a lot of surface area on that roof. And then those scuppers are pouring into this space as well. So when it's raining, you're getting all that rainwater collecting on that hard surface up on top, in addition to the water that's hitting the ground, coming in from the roadway. And then there's also some roof pipes that drain into the space. So what was happening is that we were getting tremendous flooding, and the flooding would go all the way up into that middle area, the turn lane on the road. It was pretty thick. So it was quite a bit of a problem. So we ended up, here's another example of it, right? And we had a few mature trees up top, but you can see it pretty much was just a gradual slope. Okay, so what we ended up doing is originally I started out kind of small and conservative because budget, and I doubled it. Nobody knew. Here's like another angle of it and stuff. So the bioswale now goes to, it goes way up into almost around this bend right here. So before it was going to be here, now it's coming up here. And I doubled it, one, because I knew I wasn't getting enough water. Two, I couldn't excavate down as deep as I would like, okay? Because we have right through there a major corridor for utilities, for electrical, gas lines, etc. So I got the flags for the electric that were coming up. They were about 6 inches close to the lines. I was like, okay, we're done. So then, because I couldn't get the depth that I really wanted, in order to put back the gravel and all the other materials I needed to help to hold that water for 3 to 4 days, I ended up doubling the space. My contractor gave us a great deal. So this particular project, I only paid less than 10 grand to do. How? because all I paid for was my gravel, my filter fabric, my sand, and the cost of my contractor for excavation. None of the material when we excavated went to a landfill. All of that material when we dug this space out went up and created a secondary swell. Okay, so that allows us to get the water that's coming off of that roof to come down and capture into that secondary swell, and then it can overflow into the main bioswale. So we kind of have this nice little riparian area, and we're slowing the flow is what we need to do. I did, the labor was about, labor and materials was $8,000, and then the other $2,000 was used for plant material. And then here you can see our team, our staff, with 30 sorority girls that planted this space out. So we had a really great planting on Earth Day. It was during Earth Week. So that's how I know how long ago this was. We use cowboy perennial peanut along the front edge. Even though that's not a Florida native, it's a really great sod alternative. It's absolutely delicious too. If anybody's ever eaten the flowers on it, it doesn't produce the peanuts underground, but it tastes like either a raw peanut or sweet peas, depending on your personal biology. It's kind of like, cilantro tastes like soap to some, and others it's like a spicy, I guess like a parsley, or asparagus that can make some people's urine smell really bad, and others it doesn't affect them at all. So I think it's kind of interesting, but it's really tasty. Cowboy stays a lot lower. I could do an entire lecture on perennial peanut, by the way. And an hour long plus. I was one of the first people to buy perennial peanut from Jerry Stageman, who was the one who developed it with the University of Florida for the eco-turf, which is in the adjacent parking lot. Cowboy was developed by the University of Georgia through Dr. Wayne, oh gosh, how did I just go blank on? That's terrible. Oh, I'll think of it in a second. Sorry. That's what happens when you get older, right? It's like, dang, I don't hold the things I used to hold. Anyways, you can kind of see in here, it's maybe a little bit hard to see from the aerial shot, the drone shot, but this space has a lot of undulation. It's absolutely lovely. It's one of my favorite spaces on campus. Then you can see a few more pictures here. You can actually see how tall from where Will Dunn is, one of our supervisors, and then the gal that's down in the basin, like how high that is, right? So you can see that really does have nice flow to it. We also use Kevin Anderson. He's sitting in the top kind of middle. Those are fake boulders. So if you can't afford real boulders, Space makes fake boulders, and what they do is they use the Disney method, and they take real boulders and then they make a reinforced fiberglass concrete shell over the top of them. And they have them in all different sizes and everything, and they're really great, and we can move them around and such. So fake boulders are used a lot in lieu of bollards to control cars coming through and other spaces as well, but it's also because I want to invite you in so that you enjoy nature. We do whole holistics on and educational programming on therapeutic horticulture and horticulture therapy. It sounds like the same thing with the two words inverted. It's completely different. Again, another entire lecture that could be done on that or more. And then here's Diana. One of my volunteers, she's been my ride or die since day one in the garden, and she's up in that upper riparian area. So when we first did the garden, we only had the money to plant the lower area. So the upper area had some of the existing plant and trees that you saw, but we couldn't really plant that out. So this October, thanks to the generosity of Bacardi Bottling Corp., they donated $3,000, so we bought about 700 plus trees and plants with that funds. And then they came out along with our alumni, and again, we had about 40 volunteers over the course of 2 days plant over 700 plants. And in this case, up in the top area, and you can see our little teak birdhouse, etc., the bench was built by one of our volunteers as well. All of those plants up there are designed for birds. So we had those big, huge, tall trees, our pines, and et cetera, but we needed that middle layer in there. So we started adding like a lot more Walter viburnum. We have sand oaks in there, et cetera. So that was really cool. And to make that space a little bit more friendly, I'm now currently working on getting a grant. Anybody have contacts with the Audubon Society to help me to get the dots on my windows so we don't have birds crashing into it and dying from that? Okay, so we'll talk. I need to get those dots on those windows because I don't want to invite all of our songbirds in, which are declining rapidly along with our insect populations, and have a problem there. So we need to get that taken care of as soon as possible. And then this is the crew for the Bacardi Bottling Corp that came out, and we gave them some really nice swag shirts as well. If anybody's up in our area and want to get some great swag, we're known for that. And then here's another image of the garden as well. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about selecting your plants for this space. So again, it's using Florida-friendly landscaping principles, right plant, right place. You're going to hear more about it, so I won't go into a whole lot of details on it, other than I do want to brag slightly in that our gardens are the University of North Florida Botanical Garden boasts 14 certified Florida-friendly gardens, 3 of which have the new designation of natural, which is basically platinum. And it means that all of those gardens have to have a minimum of 75% all natives. So our gardens have well in excess of 85, 90 plus. One of them is about 98. It's our native garden, and it's like there's a really gorgeous Indian hawthorn majestic beauty tree that I just can't bear to remove just because it's not native. So it's still Florida friendly. It's okay. That's in where we have a full-scale beach dune. And anyways, 10 of them are gold, and a couple are silver because that list changes almost weekly. So we have a few things that are on the list now, like creeping fig, which doesn't cause harm to your building structures. We use it to soften our brutalistic style buildings. And unlike ivy that can cause structural damage. Well, that's now on the list. I'm not removing it, sorry. Well, we just have a discussion point of how to manage the things that are on the not recommended list, which is not the prohibitive list. That's a whole different animal. And we'll just have a discussion about managing it properly. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. So let's talk a little bit about some of the decisions that you're going to make. Do you want it to be formal, informal? A lot of people think Florida-friendly or native gardens are not, kind of naturalistic and very wild-looking. Well, I can attest to our rose garden that is extremely formal, that rivals like the Washington Oaks rose garden is certified gold, and so you can get 100% formal as well. And by the way, the button bush is really cool, but that yellow canna, anybody here know what the native yellow canna can do? Is it edible? Tastes like endive. If you've never if you have any cannas in your yard, especially the yellow one, it's absolutely delicious. If you're not using any pesticides, and we're bee camps USA, so we don't use like glyphosate and things like that. If your yard is clean, trust me, put those in your salad. They're yummy. So some of our palettes, this is our palette from the garden. It's not exclusive. There's a lot more than just here, but these are the majority of the plants that are easily attainable at your local garden shops. We also have a lot of stuff that's hard to get to, but I wanted to kind of keep it to the ones that you can get. So Simpson Stopper, that's a really great one, has a lovely fragrance on it. It can be a tree or a hedge. It's that nice middle ground, most cases for the songbirds, because they need, you need your ground cover, you need your middle layer, and then your upper layer. It's called Simpson Stopper because the berries, you can eat them, but you don't want to eat too many of them in too large of a quantities because they stop you up and it prevents diarrhea or cures diarrhea. Dahoon holly, weeping yaupon. Yaupons are the black drink, so those have a lot of caffeine in them. That's our native caffeine in lieu of coffee. Again, Quercus geminata, the sand oak. That oak tree only gets about 30 feet tall. Mulberry, those are blooming right now and fruiting right now. Chickasaw plum, pawpaws, we have cedars, Walter viburnum. We have like 4 different types of Walter viburnum in this garden. So we have Withlacoochee, Standard, Densa, and Mrs. Schiller's Delight. So we showcase it in different ways. The sugar maple, I have to get a replacement. Unfortunately, it recently got knocked out, and it was poorly structured to begin with. It had codominant leaders on it, and then through the storm it split. So we ended up having to remove it along with a really good size longleaf pine. So this garden is kind of not front and center at the campus. So I attempted to leave the snags because, you know, we designed it for a bird garden. And snags in the garden are great because this was on a hill where they were at. So those roots are helping with erosion, for one. 2, it takes a long time for that tree to decompose. So while it's decomposing, if we topped it and I had it cut to about 10-foot height, while it's decomposing, it performs services underground for the adjacent plant material. It's putting nutrients back into that soil. It's providing housing for your owls, for your woodpeckers, a roosting point on top for the hawks and everything. But unfortunately, we had some work being done on the garden, and it'd been like that for honestly 2 months before anybody noticed. And then they had to get stuff up on the roof, and then everybody went crazy. What is that there? Ah! So I had to remove them. But the boss did acknowledge the fact that after I told him why I left it like that, that he did go to the site. He didn't have to tell me, he didn't have to own up to it, that he did see a hawk up there and a woodpecker using the snags. I still didn't get to keep them, but he did allow me to plant 4 more trees. So, you know, take your wins, take your losses. It's all good. And then flowering perennials, we use Salvia coccinea in all the different colors. I really like the white in particular. I think white is underused in the garden. We have our porterweeds, both the native and non-native in this garden. So you got to really watch your non-natives because they'll spread everywhere. You got to be really good at your management of those. But we have the dwarf one that only gets about 18 inches tall or so. The yellow tops, etc. And then we're going to take this garden because a lot of it is our natives, and we're going to start doing ethnobotany classes as well, which I'm excited about. So I've touched on it a little bit here with how the indigenous cultures use things like the Simpson stoppers, etc. for medicine. We'll go full in on this garden with that. So you can see some coreopsis, you can see the star hibiscus. I remember the first time I planted the Texas star hibiscus in my own personal yard, and my mother-in-law came over, and it wasn't blooming, so the flowers looked like weed. And so it's just like, oh, you guys are growing pot in the yard. It's like, no, Mom. No. It's like, take a look. It's missing a couple leaflets. You know, it's not quite the same. It's like, good grief. Again, the button bush, one of my faves. And then we have rain lilies in there as well. And then beautyberry. So beautyberry is really important. You have to make sure you're getting the native beautyberry. American Canacara, I can't say it now. Anyways, you don't want the Japanese beautyberry because where the berries are on that is like hugging the stem. On Japanese beautyberry, and I don't know why it's in the market to begin with, but it has little droops. So it's got like little stems and then it kind of hangs. So the berries are actually like off of the plant by about a quarter of an inch or so. So beautyberry makes a really great jam, and it's really important to the songbirds. They use it to eat. Make sure you don't get the Japanese style. You do get the right one. People see beautyberry label and then they don't investigate to see if it's the one that we should use or not, right? They don't look to see which cultivar it is or what region, because there's so many different plants that are very similar. So make sure you watch that. So anyways, so that's a really great plant. It's high in antioxidants. It's medicine. It makes a syrup as well. But anybody know what you can do with the leaves? Nope. It is your alternative to DEET. Scientifically proven. So William Bartram and all the explorers would, and the Indians, the Native American Indians, would use the leaves, and they would tear the leaf, release the essential oil, and they would use that as a biting insect mosquito repellent. Well, that only lasts about 15 minutes or so. I personally am literally allergic to my job. I'm allergic to over 300 plants. I have ear tubes as an adult to release the pressure in my head on a daily basis. And so I don't rub the leaves on my skin, which you could do because it causes me to break out, but I will tear it up and put it in my pockets. But what you can do with those leaves, those fresh leaves, is you can tear them up, put them in a mason jar, smash it down as thick as possible, fill that jar up with either 70% isopropyl alcohol and or witch hazel. I prefer witch hazel. It's a couple cents more, but it is not as drying. Put it out in the sun as a sun tea for about 2 weeks. You can add lemon balm to it. You could add a sprig of rosemary. Strain it off. Now here's the important thing. When you're straining the leaves out, okay, wear gloves or your hands are going to be green for 3 days. You're going to look like the Hulk. I kid you not. It will not wash out. It's got so much chlorophyll in it. But you strain it out, put it in your spray bottle. Now it lasts for 3 hours. And it even helps against flying teeth, AKA yellow fly, deer fly, that will literally bite you through your clothing. I hate those things. But anyway, so here you can also see in the background the lighting's kind of bad, a little sharp up there. But we have an ornamental grass that was developed by Dr. Wayne Hanna. I finally remembered it. It is 100% sterile, even though it's a pennisetum. It's in the royal family. He researched those and studied those and made sure that it could only be propagated by stolons, which is above ground roots, and the seeds are 100% sterile 25 to 30 years before we release the plants to make sure that he wasn't creating a problem for the environment. But it's got that beautiful red foliage in there and then backdropped by that silver saw palmetto. And then here you can see a little bit more where we have some of our other plants in here, the native spider lilies, the drop seed, some basil. We like to throw in some herbs for pollinators as well. We're Bee Campus USA. And then we upcycle, so when we have to remove trees, like I had to remove those other trees, I will take the trunks of those trees and I'll use it as edging in this particular garden. I can't do it in my formal garden. But in this garden, I'm trying to avoid taking anything to the landfill. And it, again, serves a purpose. It allows a place for fungi, bacteria, and stuff to break down and decompose. It gives a nice edge to the space, and it's saving us a lot of time and money. We like to think of ourselves as lazy gardeners. It's slightly messy gardeners. So when we're designing for bees, 80% of our native bees need bare soil to nest because they are solo and they nest in the ground. So we have to leave a few bare spots here and there, even though with Florida Friendly, we want to make sure we have our mulch layer, but we do stay a little messy. When we're trimming branches and things, what we'll do is, say I have a long branch like this, I will cut it up into little pieces like this, and I'll leave it in the garden so that the songbirds or lizards can use it as nest building material, and or it can just decompose. Now, when I have a garden that's fancy and a little formal, right, and I have a hedge, well then what do? Tuck it underneath the hedge and nobody sees it. We just hide it away. And then the plants get the nutrients back that they need and want, because that's what was in them when they, to start with, right? It decomposes, and now it's saving me money on mulch. It's saving me time on going to the landfill. So we're doing good stewardship. So even though this talk is about keeping our water healthy and recharging the aquifer, I also have to get on my soapbox for the other stuff. And then you can see the little ducks that we're using the space when it rains. We also, in the ibis, and then we've got the scorpion tails with the little yellow, or excuse me, little white flowers. That one's really cute. And this is a picture of the non-native porterweed. We also have some deer that have found their ways up there because we have some native blueberries in there and also some wax myrtles. So we're keeping the space kind of friendly for all of our wildlife. I found this chart off of the Sarasota website. I thought it was really great, so instead of me reinventing the wheel, if you can see it there, you can go to their website. This will give you some really great plants that are suitable for both your rain garden and your bioswale, for aquatics, grasses, ground covers, wildflowers, shrubs. So I thought that was a really good resource. Make sure that when you're using milkweed, we are now a Monarch Wayfinding Station 2. We partnered with Kansas State University, so we will be testing for the OE virus and microchipping our monarchs. But make sure that you're using the native milkweeds and not the tropical milkweed. And then this is actually one of those parking lots that I was telling you about in Miami Beach. It's one of the very first ones that I designed back in 2006. But this photo is a recent photo, so it looks like the garden is held up pretty decent. And then a lot of times I'm asked, will this cause a problem with mosquitoes? No, because mosquitoes breed when it's stagnant water. So as long as you disturb the water every 2 to 3 days, you're good to go. Again, I already covered how long it should take for them to hold water. And then there's a really great website, and it's called Soak Up the Rain. Recommend that you check that out. And it's the website's down below if you want to take a snapshot, or I can give it to you a little bit later. Questions? Can you go back to the next slide? Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Soak up the rain.
Do you irrigate the bioswale, or do you collect enough water for all of the plants to have what they need?
So that's a great question. So there's technically irrigation there for when it was turf. No, we do not use the irrigation in the area. There is a hose bib. We watered everything, hand watered everything for establishment. We just added 4 new trees, so we use gator bags or the tree diapers for that, and hand water, and everything lives on rainwater. So that's a great question. Yeah, majority of our campus is that way. Yes.
So is the bioswale to replace a retention area?
Yes, yes. And so we also have retention ponds too. And on our retention ponds, when I first got to UNF in 2013, it was the week of Thanksgiving, so I only had to work 3 days, which was really quite nice for my first week. I kid you not, I had 35 direct reports at that time. Now I have 15, and 1 part-time and 2 are IDD, which is intellectually developmentally differences. But 3 days, 3 times fishing somebody out of the ponds. I'm like, this is ridiculous. When I was at Clearwater, one of my employees, because I'm very different for a landscape architecture, I maintain gardens as well as design them, so I think different. And I ended up having one of our employees who was told specifically not to mow yet because it was a 3-to-1 slope and there was still dew on the ground and the dew needed to dry. Well, he ignored orders and he mowed, and his mower slid into a building. He stuck his foot out and lost the back of his heel. It was disgusting. So having had three people in the drink, right, and having to pull them out because they're trying to get too close to the water's edge. And we have slopes there, and the guys that work there can attest to this. The majority of our retention pond slopes, all of those should be 1 to 4, okay, is the maximum degree. Right, and the majority of them, there's a couple that are 1 to 3. Most of them are 2 to 1, 1 to 1. That's like where you need to use hover mowers back in the day. We used to use bungee cord and stuff to pull them back in. It was like stupid. And the first thing I did was I ended up ordering 5 native plants, got a bunch of students together and started planting the pond banks, and then allowed them to naturalize so that we keep that buffer. Now on intercampus, it's a little harder. I've been getting away with a little bit though. You know, it's a paradigm shift. It's a matter of training people to see what is aesthetically beautiful and what is acceptable. So instead of mowing all the way to the water's edge, we like a little 1 foot, 2 foot buffer because 1, it's safer, right? I don't need to have somebody flip their mower over and drown. But that area is the most sensitive space from an environmental standpoint. But it was out of safety. And then I used Florida Friendly and hang my hat on it because Duval County had adopted it. It's been in the law, and you'll hear more about it, about 33 years now. But everything, when I get challenged, I'm just following the law. It's Duval County ordinance. It says we have to have the buffer. But in the beginning, it looks kind of raggedy, right? In fairness, it doesn't look nice, okay? But if you give it time and you give it a year or so and you allow the plants to naturalize in there and you're selective in your trimming of other things, so you don't have something bolt and get really tall and everything else is like this, and you just clean that up. I get help with that, by the way. A lot of our wax myrtles, for example, we partner with the zoo, the Jacksonville Zoo, and their browse program comes out and trims them for us. I don't even have to pay for the labor, and then they use that as supplement to the diets as enrichment for the animals. Win-win, right? Saves me, saves my staff, but that's what we've done. So we plant the water's edge, and I was worried that about geese as well and increasing our geese population because we also inherited pressure washing, which was done by 2 full-time people. So geese poo was everywhere. I mean, you're like this. Like, it was so bad. And geese are better parents. It increases our fowl population with ducks because ducks will nest in high grasses, geese will not. So if you have a geese population problem like us, thick grasses work. If you use grasses like fakahatchee, lemongrass that are sharp, that will cut your skin and give you a paper cut, it will cut the skin on snakes. They don't like it. It'll keep the snakes away, and it'll keep the geese away. So those are a few things that lessons we've learned from that too, for managing your wildlife. Any other questions? No? Thank you.